Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Women's AM. This morning I'm joined by Sisters Nusrat, Fawzia and Sister Aisha to discuss purification of the heart. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. Please do call the studio with your comments or questions. The number is on your screens now, or you can tweet us at Islam Channel, #WAM15. Alhamdulillah, Sister Nusrat, I mean, we've talked about a lot of things at the start of the show, but tell us a little bit more about the impact that having this kind of heart which is not quite sound can have on us collectively and as an individual.
Well, we know in terms of law of cause and effect that whenever something is a cause or something happens, it always has an impact, and that's transferable to everything. But in relation to the individual impact that having an impure heart can have on the individual, you'll find that, firstly, we become very desensitized to sin, and as a result, our hearts harden. So this, what I'm talking about, is essentially the negligence or nonchalant attitude that people have towards sin. When we sin and we're doing it persistently and we're not making tawbah and we're just continually doing it, we don't really see it as anything big. Yet that could have been the difference between pleasing Allah and not pleasing Him. And we've advanced techniques of neutralization or defense mechanisms to say, well, it's not a big deal. And this is a lot to do with our society, where it's commonplace for people to do this, such as backbiting or listening to music or films that degrade people. It becomes so embedded that we don't think about the harm that does. And we find individually that results in the reproaching self. So the nafs al-awama that tells us that we shouldn't do something becomes quite faltered. And therefore, and because that's normally enacted through remembrance of Allah becomes less apparent or less inclined when you have a hardened heart. So it's hard to reproach yourself in actions. The collective impact that this would have on people is that, as a nation, we have what I call a stagnation of morals, and that's really when the society goes into moral decline. So you allow these diseases in the heart to manifest to the point where, as a society, our desires become our master, and we don't really think about the impact that a bad action will have on somebody else. And because we're always thinking about ourselves, we become so distracted by that, and we don't use Allah in a reference point within this public sphere of society. And with that stagnation of morals, we have also the decline of accountability. We don't hold ourselves to account in the actions that we do, whether good or bad, and that normally comes as a result of the faltering of the reproaching self, or yourself telling you that you shouldn't do something, because it acts as a check and balance against that. So we find that corruption, for example, in our society becomes quite rife. You see leaders that are more concerned about their personal welfare than that of the other people. So you lose a sense of altruistic feeling towards others. We also find that on a day-to-day level, our transactions with people, we don't feel bad about cheating somebody out of something as long as we've gained. So it all comes back to the ego and the self when those desires are not restrained. Contrasting that, for example, with people like Umar bin Ibn Khattab, the way he had a love for the people that were under his care. And even when we see Imam al-Ghazali talking about the restraining of the desires, we find that because we become a slave to that, it rules us.
Absolutely. You've touched on some really important points there. Sister Aisha, let's come back to you, because I know, it does have an impact, the kind of diseases of the heart as an individual and as a collective. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, it goes back also to shame. If you don't have a source or a fountain of enlightenment or a fountain of light within your heart which connects to the brain to give you clear consciousness and to do worthy actions, within our hearts we have a flame. And if the flame wavers, that's what also wavers the soul. And a perfect example is the hadith. It's on the authority of Aisha, where it says, "Al-ithmu ma haka fi nafsik wa karahatan yatala alayhi an-nas." That means the sin is what wavers the soul, and you hate other people to know. So basically what it is society is regressing because of the diseases which are manifesting in the heart. And it's very important for us to stick together, to create a coalition, and to hold on to the rope of Allah and stick together, basically trying to fountain, to water the empathy within our hearts. And but it's, yes, I totally agree with Nusrat. She's just hit the point, the nail on the head. So perfectly worded. Yes, yes, I totally agree with
I feel we become more selfish and we don't think of each other. We don't help each other if we are self-centered and selfish, and all what we think is gathering this dunya and compete with each other. So we don't help each other. So we lose mercy, we lose each other, compassion to each other, and looking after each other and helping each other. We lose that.
That's definitely an interesting point there, the fact that we don't perhaps help each other as much as we can. And it's not just about helping each other in kind of worldly matters, it's about asking someone, how's your iman today?
Yes,
you know, how are you feeling today?
Exactly.
What's your connection like at the moment in your salah? Are you having khushu' in your salah? And I was once asked that by someone who was very much younger than me. It was a young girl, she was a teenager, and she just randomly came up to me and said, how's your connection to Allah in your salah? And I thought, wow, that's a big question. But actually, that's the kind of questions we should be asking each other, and that's the kind of things we should be helping each other with, because that's essentially what it's all about,
Encourage
isn't it?
each other, support each other.
Yeah,
So, Sister Fawzia, let's come to you, because we know we've talked about some of the diseases that can affect us, but how can we cure those diseases of the heart? What are some of the remedies that we can use?
I feel that every one of us, before they go to sleep, I do it, and I find lots of mistakes during the week, lots of them. Yeah, so come and reflect. Think what I have done wrong, and if somebody did wrong to you, just forgive them. Just let them go free. Get them out of your heart, and say, oh, I am in calamity. Okay, I'll have to do sabr. I'm doing sabr now. Okay, I'm getting reward for the sabr. And also, if you have some feeling regarding any person, Muslim or non-Muslim, if you feel upset with them, just read that ayah in the Quran. It says, رَبَّنَا لَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Don't make our heart feel bad about anyone, and just forgive them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I say, if you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we have to do lots of istighfar, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, because we do mistakes, whether we know we are doing it or not. We all are khata'in. And also remembering the bounties, what we have, and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for breathing, for everything. Even in the Quran it says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تَحْصُوهَا. If you even count the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't even count it. So, and sabr if you have a calamity, because if you have a calamity, remember it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are here in a test, and we need to pass this test, and we need to look at the big picture, that there is akhirah that we are looking forward. What is this dunya? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about the dunya in how Allah sees this dunya is not as big as a wing of a mosquito, less than a wing of a mosquito for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is no weight for this dunya. So we need to do also al-iman bil-qada'i wal-qadar. You know, we need to remember that everything happened to us is from Allah. It's already written, so we need to do the sabr for that.
Alhamdulillah, sabr, that's definitely something for all of us to hold on to. Sister Nusrat, tell us a little bit more about some of these remedies.
As Sister Fawzia was saying, actually, yes, in order to cure the diseases, you need to get to the root of it. And like, for example, a doctor treating a person with an ailment, you can't just treat the symptoms, you have to go back to the root. So prevention is better than cure. The root of it ultimately comes down to love of the dunya and covetousness, so always feeling the need to consume. How we root that out is, one, realizing the fleeting nature of the world. So going back on Sister Fawzia's point, once you actually realize the illusions of the world and how distracting it is, and that you're on here for a temporary amount of time, as seen particularly with flowers, how they wilt after time will cease to exist, only then can you break free of that, because we know that the world is a prison for the prisoner for the believer. So actualizing this actually will help us kind of see that, and how we can do that is through regular remembrance of Allah, and also reading a lot about the hereafter. We also find that we should frequently hold ourselves to account, and this is known as muhasaba. When you put yourself and account yourself before you're held accounted, that will propel you to be on the path to self-improvement, because we know that purification of the heart is a self-improvement aspect. So when you're in that kind of frame of mind, you're able to rectify any wrongdoing within yourself that you find. And this is mentioned within the Quran, such as in Surah Al-Hashr, which is chapter 59 of the Quran, verse 18. Hold yourself to account before you are judged, and weigh your actions before they are weighed against you. That's also said by Umar bin Ibn Khattab as well. And along with that, holding yourself to account, having friends that help you in those endeavours. Having righteous companions, be it with your spouse, your family, and even just your general companions, they'll help you towards understanding your purpose in life and rooting out those diseases. And if you're not particularly in that frame of mind, because we know it's a journey, some people are just starting their journey, you'll be motivated because they'll always be checking, like you gave the example of the young girl that asked you about your khushu, how is your iman doing? You'll find that when you have that, it helps enable you to kind of be on that path to spiritual purification, and it motivates you. As mentioned particularly by the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith in Abu Dawood, a person is on the religion of his close friend. Therefore, you should look to see who you take as a close friend. So that helps us become very discerning in terms of that. Yeah.
We do actually have a caller on the line, so let's go to our caller now. We have Ibrahim from Edgware. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on Women's AM. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Mrs. Ibrahim.
Our government supported the killing of women.
I think we've lost the caller there, unfortunately. But inshallah, please do call back, inshallah. We would love to hear from you, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, some really great points there. We are coming to the end of our discussion. Sister Aisha, what kind of final tips and advice would you give?
I would say engaging in dhikr Allah. I mean, there's so many, again, excerpts in the Quran and passages in the Quran that relate to this. For example, in Surah Muzammil, verse 8, وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَاتَّبَتَّلَ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. So, you know, again, it's engaging in the best dhikr is La ilaha illallah. And there's a hadith where Moses said, Ya Allah, how can I draw close to you and how can my people draw close to you? And he says it's to say La ilaha illallah without ceasing, without stopping, so constantly. And even there was a time when Jibril appeared to Rasulullah ﷺ and he taught the zikr, but in a specific manner where La ilaha was on this side, turning the face to the right, and then illallah, pointing at the heart. And again, everything focused on the heart, focused on the heart.
Absolutely.
That zikrullah also, salawat Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it has a very calming energy to it, and it gives a lot of, you know, a lot of peace and sakina to the heart. And, you know, again, there's so many parts in the Quran where it mentions this.
Alhamdulillah, really beautiful advice. So, Sister Fawzia, your take-home message, inshallah.
Yeah, it's just what she said, but I'm saying La ilaha illallah, feel it, and make Allah is the only one you worship, not the money, not this dunya, not your children, not your husband. If you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala number one to worship, so La ilaha illallah has meaning, and it has to affect your action. And also, alhamdulillah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, it says, He says, وَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Every time, even if you have a calamity, say alhamdulillah and Allah reward for you.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. And Sister Nusrat, your final message, inshallah.
I think my final message is remember that this is always a journey. Spirituality in terms of purification of the heart is never gotten in one go. So make sure that you're doing all that you can, whether that's being with friends, doing dhikr privately, setting yourself goals. It's important.
Set yourself goals. I like that message to end on. Well, the heart is both the strongest and weakest muscle in the body, and like a flower, the more nourishment we give it, the stronger it becomes. But when we starve it, it wilts and grows weaker. The nourishment for the heart is the remembrance of Allah. Ibn al-Qayyim said, whosoever causes his heart to settle with his Lord shall find himself in a calm and tranquil condition. And whosoever sends it amongst the people shall be disturbed and excessively perturbed. We must ensure that our heart is truly attached to Allah and the hereafter, and do all we can to guard our heart against anything that stunts our progression in this path to purification. Well, we've had a great discussion this morning, alhamdulillah, but if you missed any of this episode, do not despair. You can catch the repeat tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. inshallah. And of course, we have a highlight show on Sunday at 3 p.m. that will give you a roundup of the best bits from all of this week. We're off to another break now, but do stay tuned, as we'll be back with our last segment where we'll be discussing the rights of a Muslim in accepting invitations. We'll see you in just a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.